Good morning, everyone, and welcome. So today we're going to talk about 7 website design trends to expect in 2026. And then I want to go over some UX best practices that never go out of style as well. So let's start with the website design trends of 2026. So I want to start by saying that users, they judge your website's credibility before they've really even read a single word on your site. So when someone lands on your site, design is the first thing they notice. And within seconds, they really have decided if they trust you or not at that point. So I've actually done a user interview before where the user stated he thought a company was out of business because of the dated look of their website design. So modern layouts and consistent branding really do matter to help build trust with your users. So just stay away from all of that cluttered, outdated layouts or design. Don't use lower quality images because all of that works to make your site feel less credible. So let's do a poll question right out of the gate. So we want to know what your top priorities are for 2026. Are you looking to improve your overall user experience, update the visual design or style of your site? Are you looking to increase conversions, modernize your tech, or are you trying to just enhance accessibility? So if you have one that's not on the list here, just drop it in the chat. We'd really love to know what it is. And just keep in mind that you can pick as many priorities as you want. You're not limited to just one. Ooh, all right, great. It looks like most people want to improve their overall user experience, which is wonderful to see. So let's just dive into our trends right away. Our first trend is really contextual and adaptive UI, which is user interface. And this is really about tailoring content to what you know about the user so their experience feels more relevant to you. So websites are really responding to user situation, things like the time of day, their location, environmental conditions, and if they're a new or returning user. And a lot of time this comes from simple data your site already collects from cookies around your user's device type and their location. So here's an example where the site updates itself based on the user's location and local weather. The websites can show weather-based content by combining that location data with the weather API. So if it's raining, the user sees the hero section promoting rain gear. If it's snowing, winter gear appears. And then on a sunny day, the homepage really shifts to outdoor activities like hiking. So this works well for both design and user experience because the content instantly feels more relevant to your users. They don't really have to dig around to find what they're probably already looking for. And sometimes that relevance can even inspire purchases that they weren't originally looking for, which is always great. Here's another example based on the time of day. So during business hours, if phone calls convert best for your site, your primary call to action should encourage users to call you. So you can see here we have a call us call to action right in the utility navigation, and it would probably also be in other areas of the website as well. But what if your business is closed? There's really no one there to answer the phone. So if you don't want to frustrate your users who are expecting to have someone answer the phone, you should change your call to action. So you can shift that button to something more helpful like request a quote or contact us, which would lead to a website form instead of a phone call. This is really useful if you have users across multiple time zones where it isn't really obvious to them when you're closed, or if you have like unusual hours. So if you know no one can help your user at that moment, don't set them up for failure. Just give them an easier path, like a short form that they can submit right away. And let's move to an example of new versus returning visitors. So for new visitors, the site has no history or behavior really to go off of. So the content needs to keep things broad and welcoming, showing featured articles, popular topics, like what we're seeing here in this blog listing example. So there's no assumptions about what your users want because we don't know them yet. So keep it clean, just neutral starting point that really invites all of that exploration. But when that same user returns, the experience can really shift in a subtle way. So when a user comes back to this blog, for example, the site can simply place a continue reading section at the top of the page, helping the users jump right back in where they left off. So there's no interruption, just a gentle reminder or cue that feels just really natural and helpful. So this is the kind of personalization we want to see in 2026. So we want it to be quiet, unobtrusive, and genuinely just useful. So the user doesn't have to think, oh, wow, the site is personalizing to me. Instead, they can just think like, oh, good, this is exactly what I was looking for. Okay. Our next trend is bite-sized content. And this does not mean creating less content. It really means structuring your content so it feels lighter and more digestible and easier for your users to scan without losing that depth that really supports SEO. So in 2026, design isn't really about getting users to read more. It's about helping them understand your content faster. So we've always known people skim and don't read every word on your site, but that behavior has evolved in the last couple of years. So I can really thank social media and even AI summaries and that feeling of, the users now have of just tell me what I need to know. We're processing information differently now. So I guess to put it simply, attention spans are shrinking a little bit, and AI has really trained people to expect those quick summaries, and that feed style scrolling has just changed how we read information. So all this means that users want information. So I guess as designers, we're really shifting how we present information, and that means making the important stuff stand out, breaking content into small bite-sized pieces, and using simple familiar elements like tabs or card styles that really help people find what they need at a quicker glance. So I would like to show a live look here. All right. So this is Grammarly's homepage, and it's a great example of bite-sized content done well. Instead of long paragraphs, everything is broken into short, scannable chunks. The layout is designed for fast understanding. We have bold heading, clean visuals, really simple spacing. So your eye immediately knows where to go, and you can understand the product's value almost instantly. It allows the user to skim first, read later, and just get to the point immediately. Well, so this is their homepage, and to be fair, the homepage is really supposed to funnel users further into your website. But you can see when we go to a detailed page, we have that same effect here, where we have a lot of content, but it doesn't feel so heavy because it's broken up into bite-sized pieces, and it's a little bit more digestible and not as overwhelming for your users. You can see we have a nice clean list style here. So even though it doesn't feel like there's a lot of content on the site, there really is. All right. So how can you take text-heavy content and make it more bite-sized? We're just gonna look at this example here. So the issue with this is that even though it includes a bulleted list, it's still pretty hard to scan, and there are multiple key points within each bulleted list that are getting lost. So here the text is it's kind of dense, the spacing's a little tight, and the whole block just feels really visually heavy. So there's no clear hierarchy, so the key points don't stand out, and users end up working harder than they should just to understand everything. This updated version is a lot stronger. It's instantly more scannable. Instead of long paragraphs, the information is broken into clear bite-sized cards with icons that really help guide the eye. So this reduces that cognitive overload and helps users really understand those key points a lot faster. So overall, the layout really delivers that same information, but just in a way that feels more modern and efficient and aligns with how users are actually consuming content today. So with this approach, you really need to say what you do clearly. So here's an example of a website whose heading says, streamline operations, skyrocket revenue, and delight customers. But even after reading it, you still have no idea what this company actually does. Those kind of promises could really apply to almost any industry. So software, healthcare, manufacturing, really pretty much anything. The message it does sound impressive, but it really doesn't give users any real context. So the problem here is clarity. Users should immediately understand what you do and not have to guess. They shouldn't have to spend time digging through your website just to figure out what your service is. Now you want to make it really easy for them. And then I just want to point out that their most valuable line, recognized as the best MVNE globally, isn't accessible, meaning that users with visual impairments won't be able to even see or read it. So what the company actually does is help mobile service providers go to market faster and just helps with like operations and customer relationships. So now here's a clearer, more friendly heading that communicates that right away. So it says smarter platforms for smarter mobile networks. This works because it instantly tells users who they help and provides a little bit more context. So this is what bite-sized content is really all about, being simple, specific, and immediately understandable. So users are scanning faster than ever. So clear, concise messaging like this isn't an option anymore. It's just a core part of modern design. All right. So let's move on to our next trend, which is vector infused imagery. So vector images are graphics made from shapes, lines, and curves instead of pixels, which you see in photography. So because they're built from these scalable shapes, they can be resized to any size without having to worry about them getting blurry. So this is the kind of artwork that's perfect for logos, icons, illustrations, and UI elements like that. So let's take a live look at this example here. Moving forward, designers aren't choosing between vector artwork and photography anymore. They're really blending the two together. So this approach keeps the authenticity of real photos. So if I scroll down in this example here, you'll see we have this really authentic photo of a convention that this client had. And then if you scroll a little bit further down, you can see we're introducing some vector artwork, which is really great for this client too, because they had such a bold, vibrant color palette that vector artwork was just a really nice way to bring all those colors together. And the result's really hitting a perfect balance between the brand feeling too sterile on one side and too whimsical on the other. And then vector artwork also allows you to do kind of more fun and unique things. Like if I click the search here, you can see a little bit of a surprise that it's not just a simple search, but we're embedding the vector artwork here as well. It's introducing a lot of unique shapes because as opposed to a lot of photography, it doesn't have that box constraint, so we have a lot of fun effects here. And then as you scroll through the site, you can see, we're introducing other vector artwork, some more imagery, and then even here we have vector artwork in the heading section. So why does this blend of illustration and photography work so well? It really adds personality, especially for data heavy or academic content. And it gives brands a lot more flexibility. So styles can evolve, but you can change the colors, the shapes, the textures. So it's really easy to adapt the look for campaigns or events without having to rebuild or look for an entire new photo library. Let's take another live look here. So Honey Helps is another great example of vector infused imagery done right. They use real photography to ground the brand in something genuine and trustworthy. You can see the product imagery, the people, the real experiences, but then they layer it in simple, friendly illustrations of the bees and like that honeycomb pattern that add that personality without overwhelming the design. So they create a warmth that helps guide your eye and it gives the brand like a playful, approachable tone. So the combination makes the site feel more human and memorable, but it's also still very professional. And they carry that throughout all of the pages. Oh, yeah, they carry that throughout all the pages of the site. So it's really just a perfect example of how illustration can enhance the emotional feel of a website, while photography really delivers that authentic feel that a lot of users are looking for as well. All right, so my next trend, number 4 here, is quiet, invisible AI. This is where you use AI to improve your website design in ways that simply make the site feel smarter. So we're not trying to be too flashy or gimmicky, just really helpful behind the scenes. Okay, so AI tools can now really adapt to visuals on the fly, so automatically extending, cropping, or rebalancing images in real time as the website loads. So, for example, if you have a portrait image that needs to be used as a white hero banner, AI can intelligently extend the background to fill the space naturally, keeping the design seamless and polished across all devices. So without using AI, you really have two options. You can let the image fill the space, but that often crops out important details, like in this example where the woman is zoomed in too far and it's really hard to tell what she's doing. Your other option is to show the full image without filling the space, but that can leave the layout looking like unbalanced or awkward. And I guess another option is actually you can find a completely different image to use. That can be difficult to do, especially if you have limited resources. So AI introduces another option where it can intelligently extend or add content in the image so it fills the space more naturally. So this works well, but it also requires a little bit of a trust because while AI usually does a great job, it can still make mistakes, especially with more complex images. The image that I'm using here is pretty simple. So these do require some setup. Humans need to predefine the transformation rules that run automatically on the website. So for example, you set the rule once and here it was extend the background to fill the width. And from that point on, every time the image loads, the AI applies that transformation in real time. AI is also used for smart cropping, and that's telling AI what really matters in an image, such as a face, a person, a logo, a product. and then automatically just adjusting how that image is framed depending on where it appears. So you still have to tell the system what the important part of the photo is by setting a parameter, but once you do it, it knows how to handle that image across different layouts moving forward. So without this, traditional cropping can cut off the subject's head, zoom in at weird angles, or really miss the focal point entirely when you shift between a thumbnail to a wider image or even a vertical layout for mobile. So with AI-driven smart cropping, the focal point stays centered and visible no matter the screen size. So on a website, this keeps visuals looking clean and consistent across all breakpoints. It also improves the UX really by ensuring that users always see the most relevant part of each image. And for the content teams, it saves time by removing the need to manually crop different versions for every device. So you can see here the original image of the girl. She's not centered, and a lot of websites tend to crop where they keep the center part the priority. So that would cause the girl to get cut off a little bit, but Smart Crop would know to keep her in the center. Just another quick example of how it looks with and without that Smart Crop feature. So in this case, the tablet size causes the man's face to get cut off in an awkward spot. But with the Smart Crop, you can set a parameter to really focus on the face, and it adjusts the image appropriately to make it look a little bit more natural. Okay. All right. Next, we're all familiar with seeing related content on a page. So, like related blogs, product, resources, and so on. That's not really a new trend. That's really just good practice at this point. But now we can take that idea kind of to the next level for 2026. So, instead of relying on manual tags, you can use AI to learn the relationship between items based on real user behavior. So, what people are searching for on your site, what they're clicking on, and what they're viewing together. So how that works is first it tracks the user behavior. It looks at how your users are searching, clicking, and downloading on your site, which does require a certain level of runtime. Second, it identifies patterns like which pages or products are often viewed together. And third, it really continues learning, so recommendations shift as new user trends emerge on your site. So the result is really a lot more dynamic and relevant content suggests that improve over time without all of that manual upkeep. So here's an example of how that could work on a healthcare website. So a user visits a medical equipment site to look at surgical light. With manual tags, the site would likely show other lighting products, and that's it, because if someone's interested in lighting, we assume they want to see all of our lighting options. But with AI-driven recommendations, the system might take it in a different direction. So it can surface items that users often view or purchase together. Like here, instead of looking at surgical lights, maybe users know that this is the light I always need, like it's very specific to my needs. So it would surface other items often like the mounting, the bulbs, the power kits that go with that surgical lighting. So the result is an experience that feels a little bit more proactive and intuitive. It's anticipating the user's needs instead of just guessing at them. Okay, our fifth trend here is minimalism plus intentional white space. So minimalism is all about stripping away anything that isn't essential. So what is essential becomes impossible to miss. So when you pair that with intentional white space, which doesn't really have to be white, it's just open space in general, you're really creating a lot of breathing room around the content. So let's take a live look at an example of this. Okay. So this layout uses generous spacing to guide the eye and make the content easy to absorb. We're looking at a lot of clean typography here, a very restrained color palette, and simplified elements that keep the focus on what matters without distractions. So overall, it's really creating like a calm, modern design that feels very confident and highly usable. It's really a great demonstration of how intentional white space can strengthen the user experience. And you can see this website in particular has a lot of fun movement, especially here when we're looking at the different colors that the headphones come in. I will say though that I wish the same minimalistic approach carried into this section. These areas start to feel a bit cramped compared to the rest of the design. Simply by adding more space around it, they could have matched the clarity and the calmness seen in stronger sections of this design here. But you can see they still do a lot of really cool things that are worth looking at. Okay, let's take a look at one more design. So again, the layout stays simple and uncluttered here. Just wait for it to scroll. Um, So what we're seeing is short bursts of copy, plenty of breathing room around each section, which in this case is using a background image. And the background image is not super busy or overwhelming, so it pairs really well here for that white space. The white spacing around the content really does draw your eye to it, making the content feel more approachable and keeps the overall experience more calm and focused. So, and again, white space doesn't have to literally be white. It's just really about empty or open space around that content. Okay, so let's move on to our sixth trend here. So it's typography, using typography as identity. So as websites get cleaner and more minimal, typography matters more because it carries the message. So with fewer visuals on the page, the words and how they look can essentially become the design. All right, let's take a look at this site here. And we're going to look at some different fonts. So the typography here feels very authoritative and modern without slipping into that like cold corporate vibe. It really uses a lot of wide lettering and generous spacing to make the headlines feel confident but really friendly still and a little bit airy. So it creates like a calm rhythm that feels deliberate and very welcoming. So a bold heading really guides the eye. It gives the user clear anchor points on the page and makes scanning a lot faster and effortless for your users. And they did use all caps typography to help that authoritative and attention grabbing effect. It's really commanding the space and it feels a little bit more like a statement. The serif of this font adds a layer of warmth and refinement. It really softens the boldness, giving the headlines a more human editorial feel. So the small detail suggests like expertise and trust, showing that the brand is not just modern, but thoughtful and polished too. And a serif, by the way, it's just that small decorative stroke or foot added to the end of the lettering. Sans serif fonts are usually easier to read for digital mediums, where serif fonts are often used for like books or magazines. But using a serif font like this for the heading is completely fine. The typography here really leans into that refined serif font, which immediately gives it a more elevated editorial feel. So the thin sculpted letter forms add that sense of polish and luxury, similar to like a high-end magazine or just a luxury brand in general. It feels very intentional and artistic, and it's not just rather than just being like purely functional. So overall, the serif type here gives the brand that sophisticated, elegant voice, stylish, modern. But when we change that font style, you can instantly feel the change in the brand. So the simple sans serif font completely changes the tone. It feels cleaner, lighter, and maybe even more modern, but also much more casual. So instead of signaling luxury, it really leans into the approachability and simplicity feel, and it loses that high fashion editorial edge and starts to feel more like a standard contemporary site. So font selection is really getting more important. Sixth trend here is dark design. So dark design is an aesthetic choice that uses deep colors, shadows, and contrast to create a dramatic, expressive look. And not to be confused with dark mode, which is a usability feature that switches an interface to dark tones to reduce eye strain. Dark design is about style, where dark mode is about comfort and function. So here, let's do a live look. The dark design on this upstream site works well because it creates a sleek, modern, high-end feel. The dark background makes the bright text and visuals really pop, giving the content a lot of clarity and focus. It also adds a sense of mood and depth that makes the site just feel a little bit more immersive and intentional. So overall, the dark palette gives the brand a more polished, confident presence that stands out from typical white layouts. Do you have another example to talk through? When we talk about dark design, we're really talking about like a UX choice that adds a lot of clarity and intention. So what I mean by that is dark interfaces naturally create stronger contrast, which helps important information like data points, product details, and key actions just stand out instantly. It helps reduce the visual noise, guides the eye, and makes the experience feel a little bit more focused and easier to process. For brands working with advanced technology or complex system, this kind of design can, I guess, really make that experience feel more controlled, a little bit more polished, and less overwhelming. I will say that dark design tends to resonate most with people roughly 13 to 35, since they're used to dark interfaces in a lot of apps and games and tech tools. It can feel more modern and comfortable and familiar to them, especially for those long screen sessions. However, older audiences often prefer lighter design because they feel more traditional, brighter, So you really just need to know your users to help make that decision of what would work for you. All right, our last trend is humor and playfulness. So, humor is becoming one of the easiest ways for brands to stand out because so many websites are starting to feel flat or look the same. So, adding small jokes, a playful line here or there, or just a subtle personality really signals authenticity and reminds users that there are real people behind these screens. So, even serious industries can benefit from just a moment that makes users smile because users remember how something makes them feel more than anything. Okay, so this example works because it takes a dry technical topic such as website cookies and plays it out literally with real cookies in a glass of milk. That little mismatch creates an instant moment of humor. It makes the topic feel a little bit more friendly and signals to users we know this stuff can be a little bit boring, so here's a small joke to make it easier to pay attention. And in this example, the humor comes from the Yeti reacting to the user's actions. He watches as you type your email, but when it's time for your password, he covers his eyes to give you some privacy. So it's just like a small, fun moment that users appreciate. So touches like this can lighten up otherwise what could be like a boring step, making the brand feel more approachable and creates a memorable interaction without obstructing the user experience. This mail trip example shows a sweaty monkey hand hovering over like a big red send button. It's funny because it really captures that universal moment of panic before sending a big email blast. So we've all felt that hesitation where we double check everything, hope nothing goes wrong. And then by turning that stress into a playful visual, MailChimp's really making that experience a lot more relatable, and lighthearted and just reassuring. It's reminding users that they're not alone in this nervous moment. All right, let's do another live look here. So this is the future of news starts here. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit to this section. So this is the standout element of the site is this burning newspaper video. It's unexpected, it's a little playful and instantly shows personality. So it breaks that usual seriousness we see in corporate design and creates an immediate emotional hook. So it's funny because it's playfully exaggerated in the idea that traditional journalism is going up in flames, using humor to highlight a very real shift in the industry. So it's just a great example of how humor can be added to a website in a way that just feels fresh and memorable without being too over the top. And if you're really struggling to find a natural place on your website to add humor, you don't have to worry. Your 404 page can be your best friend. It's one of the few places where users expect something unexpected, which makes it perfect for like a light, playful moment. So if I click this example here, Airbnb does this beautifully with an image of a little girl dropping her ice cream cone. It taps into that universal oops feeling in like a simple, relatable way. So instead of your users getting frustrated that they landed on a page that no longer exists, this visual here softens that frustration and gives users a quick smile before guiding them back on track. All right. So now that we know our trends, let's keep in mind some UX best practices because no matter what trends are good for your website, you do always want to put UX first. But let's do another poll question for everyone. We want to know what are the biggest pain points on your current website? Is it your navigation? You think it's hard for your users to find the information they need? Content organization, where your pages feel cluttered or inconsistent. Visual design, you think your website's outdated or it's not on brand. Conversion paths, unclear or not driving action. Performance, load speed, if you think your website's slow or unreliable. Again, if it's something else, please drop it in the chat. And feel free to select as many that apply to you. It looks like conversion, visual design are some big ones, content organization, navigation. So all great information to know. But no matter what your pain point is, I do want to say the best place to start a website design project is really just by getting to know your users. So a user-first approach puts the audience needs, goals, and pain points at the heart of every design decision. So by focusing on what serves the user best, you're really creating a more intuitive and sufficient experience that keeps users just engaged and happy. So all this can be discovered just simply by starting with user research. Another what I want to talk about is images can really make or break your design. So let's take a live look here at the AirPods website, which is truly a beautiful site. Give it a second here. We have this really great video up here. And then as we scroll down the page, You'll notice that the graphics are very cohesive, very consistent. You have these bright backgrounds with these dark silhouettes on it, which are wonderful. You have sleek product imagery. You can tell that they spent a lot of time and energy and create and focus on creating very strong visual graphics like this. So here's a screen grab from that website we just saw, and it shows a very sleek product with a very simple, nice, and clean layout. So it looks great. But what happens when you substitute that artwork with bad photography? Well, the website doesn't really feel as chic anymore. It has a different vibe. So getting your photography right is really crucial to the design, and images should really be added to your site thoughtfully instead of haphazardly. So don't think that images will just fall together. They really do take time and thoughtfulness to get right. So here you should recognize this too, another screen grab from that AirPod site. It's just a beautiful graphic with room for content. We have this bright purple color in the background, a beautiful silhouette, lots of room for copy. But if we take like that same layout, but we use the stock image that we just found that wasn't really thoughtfully selected, it just doesn't look as great. So there isn't room for text here. The image is too stock feeling, and it's not as strong as graphic as what we just saw. And I can't tell you how many times people wish to replicate the Apple or even like the Patagonia website, but you really just have to have the right imagery to support that type of design. Next, you need well-defined calls to actions to guide users through your site to do things like making a purchase or filling out a form, subscribing to a newsletter, or donating online. Calls to actions should really be strategically placed, visually distinct, and very compelling on your site. So excuse me. So using contrasting colors, bold typography, our buttons really make those call to actions easily noticeable. So it should be one of the more prominent elements on your page. Besides navigation, it's not the place that I would pour all of your creative energy. The more complicated you make it, the harder it becomes for your users to find what they need. They feel very overwhelmed. And while mega menus can be helpful, they can also just easily overwhelm people if they're packed with too much information. So we should focus more on that intuitive, easy to use navigation that helps visitors find what they need quickly without overwhelming them. So clear menus, logical page structures, and consistent navigational elements all make the experience just feel more effortless. Users don't have to think about how to move through your site. It's just natural and intuitive to them. Also, prioritizing users really involves ensuring accessibility for all individuals, regardless of abilities or disabilities. So a great place to start with with your color palette. So you just want to make sure there's enough color contrast in how you are using your colors so that even people with poor eyesight are able to absorb your website. So ensuring accessibility features such as alt text for images and proper heading structures are just a couple of other ways to make sure the website is usable for individuals with disabilities. And lastly, do not ignore your footers. So footers are a very critical part of a website design because they serve as a safety net for users who reach the bottom of a page without finding the information they needed. So if a user has scrolled all the way down, it often indicates they didn't find the content they needed. This makes the footer your last opportunity to guide them effectively. It's essentially your website's Hail Mary. So the Metal Tech example here at the top includes a search bar right in the footer, along with important resources, links, and contact information, so that if a user didn't find what they're looking for, they have other routes to take to get there. The Silver King beverage example here at the bottom includes a form for convenience, as well as important links and their social media information. So a lot of users do expect to find this type of information in the footer, so you want to make sure it's there. At the end of the day, great website design isn't about trends for trend's sake. It's really about creating experiences people trust. So users judge credibility in seconds, and they decide whether to stay or leave almost instantly. And most will never return if they were frustrated at any point. So design is really the layer that communicates clarity, confidence, and care before even a single word is read on your website. And when we get the design and the user experience right, we really remove that friction and reduce confusion, which guides people towards what they came there to do. So it's not just decoration, it's really how you earn attention, build that trust, get that credibility, and keep your users coming back. So that is why it matters. All right, so I guess we will move on to any questions that came up.
Thank you, Jenna. That was outstanding as usual. Appreciate all the insight on the trends and the best practices. And as you would expect, we've got a boatload of questions. Some were submitted ahead of time and some were submitted during your presentation. So let's get right to it. The first one, what tools are used for smart cropping for?
I guess I don't know any WordPress specific ones. The one that I was looking at specifically and or had in mind for this presentation was called Cloud. I would assume that that works with WordPress because it's designed for CMSs. So I would assume since WordPress is one of the leading CMSs that Cloudinary would be work for it. But I haven't dug into WordPress specific options, but I'm sure there's also plugins out there at this time.
Sounds like it might be a question for Claude or ChatGPT too, if you're looking for a particular thing. All right, any AI builders that you would recommend or do not recommend?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'd say AI tools right now are great accelerators, but they're not really great replacements for strategic design. So there are tools like Stitch and Uzerd, I think that's how you say it, and like Framer AI that can quickly generate layouts or concepts that help you, have a stronger starting point or move a little bit faster. And then there's platforms like, Adobe Firefly and Cloudinary, which I just mentioned, which are incredibly useful for images. Where I'd be cautious is just with fully automated, like build your whole site AI platforms. I've worked with a few and they just tend to produce very, very generic designs and they really struggle with complex information at this time and they create limitations for you when you want to scale your website. So I'll say that AI right now seems to be working best when it assists designers, not when it tries to replace them for the entire process.
Yeah, perfect. I think that applies to AI and just about everything right now. There's a pretty good one here. So, looking for tips on building for longevity, which trends have remained over the years and might do so going forward?
Well, that's also a really good question. So the trends that last, I guess, are the ones that just genuinely and consistently improve the user experience. So like I mentioned earlier, like having clean navigation, intuitive content structure, it really just remains essential because they match how people are searching and skimming through your site. I will say that minimalism and that like intentional white space that I talk about continues to work because users really do prefer clean and uncluttered pages. So I see that one's been holding strong for many years. And then strong typography, I think, is starting to become a staple too, as well as just making sure your website performs fast and also just making websites easier to just read and use in general. So if you want to have a website with a really long shelf life, you should just focus more on these UX fundamentals and then maybe layer in some newer visual trends on top of it in ways that you can like easily update and change over time.
Excellent for that. Hopefully some of those will stick around. I think the white space is going to be very popular going forward. Allows you to breathe. There was one statement question, simply said PDF remediation. Obviously, we're talking about accessibility. Is there anything that you do? Because I know there's tools out there that you can use, but is there anything that you do in order to maybe do a first pass of your PDFs to see how much remediation is necessary? And then what do you do if it's like too much from a content perspective? Is there a tool you can use?
Yeah, PDF remediation is not my area of expertise. I do know, though, that it continues to be a challenge because PDFs are simply less accessible than web pages, obviously. But when possible, I think the best route to go is maybe to convert your PDF content into a web page because then it's like naturally more readable, mobile friendly, and accessible. But when you do have a PDF that truly it needs to be a PDF, you just want to make sure you're tagging it right, have reading orders, include that alt text just like you would on a web page and just follow all those accessibility standards. So there are tools like Adobe Acrobat Pro that help. I've used InDesign before a long time ago to help with the PDF. But really the big takeaway is that PDF should be the exception in my opinion, not the default. So if you're aiming for something highly accessible, I would try to leverage your website actually as much as you can.
Yeah, that's great advice. And sometimes can't do that because you have archival content or stuff that's been built for a while or needs to be there for compliance. I just dropped I just dropped a tool in the chat called Grackle Docs. And this is a company that will go in and scan all of your files, all of your documents, all your PDFs, all of that, and look for any accessibility issues and then they can run a report as to what needs to be done They can remediate it, or you can purchase the report so you can remediate it. So, Site Improve is another one, although they can be pretty pricey because also a monitoring tool as well, and they also have consent management platforms and all types of things. But Grackle Doc seems to be someone that's emerging. I've had several conversations with this entity, and they're pretty good at what they do. So that would be my recommendation as well, besides what Jenna spoke about. All right, let me take a look here. One more. How are ADA accessible websites handling large quantities of information that had been presented in large multi-column data tables?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, interesting question as well. I feel like accessible websites are moving away from giant multi-column tables and more towards formats that are like easier for everyone to use. So instead of showing one huge grid, the information is broken into those smaller sections or that bite-sized content that I mentioned earlier and stacked into a simple single column layout that can work better. You just have to kind of re-envision how you're thinking about the content because you might be so focused on the table that you're not aware that it can actually be presented in simpler ways. There are like expandable sections, filters, downloadable files, also let users get just the data they need. And when a table is necessary, I guess proper tagging helps the assistive technology read it correctly. So the main goal here is just clarity, making complex information just easier to understand without losing any of that detail. But there are a lot of practices in place right now that do make tables accessible. You just have to make sure that that is the best way to share that information. And I do find that I lean towards tables when I know the users want to compare the data. But if they don't want to compare the data, then I try to leverage other alternative styles for that information.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. It's the whole approach to making sure that it's accessible to screen readers in the table. Once again, in the chat, I just dropped maybe a helpful link for people who are considering this or who are struggling with it on some best practices to do that. So you can pick up the link there. That is the last question. Unless anybody else has one quickly they want to drop into the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and start our wrap up here. If you happen to submit something here in the next couple of minutes, I can pose it to Jenna. But before we do wrap up, I'd like to mention we got a few upcoming webinars which are open for registration. Please join us as we kick off the new year on January 15th with Digital Marketing 2026, Staying Ahead in the Age of AI. The new rules of marketing data collection, compliance, and measurement will be presented on February 19th. And on March 19th, we will be unveiling winning digital strategies for higher education. As always, all webinars are complimentary and begin at 10 o'clock Central Time, and you can learn more and register at learn@northwoods.com. If you're looking for information on a specific topic or just want to stay up to date on the latest trends and developments in the constantly changing world of digital, check out our blog, our recorded webinars, our YouTube channel, and our Around the Campfire podcast, which features casual conversations with our experts on all things digital. We encourage you guys to check it out. And lastly, if you'd like to learn more about Northwoods and the many services we offer, from the website design and development to custom software and digital marketing to digital advertising and marketing strategy, visit us at nwsdigital.com to explore our services, our details, read client stories, and much, much more. One final thing, after the webinar window closes, a very short survey will be available, and we would greatly appreciate it if you could share your feedback on how we did this morning. So that concludes our webinar. I'd like to thank Jenna and each of you for joining us this morning. We look forward to seeing you again at our next webinar. And until then, have a great day, a great rest of your week, and a happy holiday season. Thank you.